Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia. I believe we're at chapter 309. I think that's the one. But hey everyone, I'm recording this on a Monday evening. Apologies I couldn't be here sooner. The weekend was relatively rough on me. So here we are, we're here. Anyway, chapter 309. So I got my general points and I've got the page-by-page walkthrough. I will just jump into the general points. I don't think it should be too long. I've only got 3 pages of notes, which is usually a good sign because we're usually at 4. First general note is no back go. You guys know that I am really hoping for this. There was no back go here, but we did get other things, such as the fact that people are in on it. And I think I might have mentioned this as a possibility in previous videos, but I'm not too sure. Regardless, very happy to see this here. This makes much more sense to me. Now, the thing that I really did not expect, because I thought he was going to be a casualty in all this, was All Might. I did not think All Might was actually going to be on the ground with Izuku. That actually changes things up significantly, because this alters whether or not UA actually has an official task force looking for Izuku. Because if All Might isn't at school, Nedzu most likely knows. It would be very strange for him to not be in the loop, and by extension, it'd be strange for Aizawa to not be in the loop. Now, mind you, the issue is we don't know exactly what the kids are thinking here, and I'll have more to talk about Bakugo at the end of the video because there is something relevant to Bakugo here. But with this situation, Nedzu at the bare minimum is likely to know, and that does change the priority with regards to whether or not people are looking for Izuku. When you have the large players in Izuku's life, that being All Might and Inko, signing off on Izuku being out there, it changes the dynamics a little bit. There shouldn't be an official search party for Izuku. If there is any search party, it's going to be the kids from 1A doing it. But again, this is a completely different thing. Izuku isn't as isolated as we were led to believe. Moving on, next general point is no more muscular. So this is in regards to Jason, in case he's watching the video. But yeah, no, it turned out like muscular actually was done for the count. Now I do remember that White Despair, another commenter, mentioned that people thought that muscular is dead because Izuku blew a hole in him. No, he's not. Come on, don't be don't be like that. Muscular's fine. As we see, he gets taken by Izuku over to the police station. So that's actually pretty good. I really thought we were gonna get like one last hurrah from muscular, but we didn't go that direction. So legitimately nice surprise. Next up is actually a more technical point, which has to do a lot with how this thing all shook down. Because at the end of the day, this chapter is the fill-in chapter. This is a chapter that's here to say, like, hey readers, here's how we got to this situation. It's the chapter that's there to set up answers. And when you look at the chapter and you look at the way it ends us on an abstract page. And what I mean by an abstract page is that you pretty much just see designs together. That abstract page actually doesn't mean anything in real life physicality. It's a symbol. That final page is very symbolic. It's just conveying the idea of like, oh my gosh, these 5 characters are together now. It doesn't serve any practical purpose because they're not actually anywhere near Izuku or as near to Izuku as they looked. It's ultimately a hype up page. A hype up page like that makes sense in this type of chapter, and it also makes sense in a setup chapter because ultimately that page is there specifically to hype up the fan base. And this is where we go into talking about the framing of this little mini arc. I still want to call it an arc. I don't think it's over, but like this would be a pretty nice break point to go somewhere else. But when you look at this whole thing and the way it was constructed, what it ultimately tells you is that this construction makes more sense from the perspective of a series that lives in a magazine that is run by popularity. Because when you look at the explanation for how we got here, it's very mundane. Mundane explanations, usually people don't enjoy that. People want the excitement. And to the author's credit, I mean, look at it, right? When we first saw Izuku standing on top of that gargoyle, speculation was through the roof. And that's ultimately the effect that the author wants to create here. And what's important here is just seeing how the author went about making it so that we would be more biased to draw the wrong conclusion. Now, when it comes to framing points in particular, you know, it's all about the choices that the author makes. For instance, he chose not to show All Might and Izuku separating before Izuku shows up on the gargoyle, even though that's probably what happened given what's talked about in this chapter. They showed us Izuku with a backpack, which would be the indicator that would say like, oh, well, Izuku probably has survival supplies. He's probably on the road by himself right now. He also showed us Izuku super damage, which is like, oh, well, Izuku must have been dealing with a lot of things up to now. So the framing points all came together to imply a situation that was much more drastic than it actually was. Now, also worth pointing out is that Izuku is obscuring himself, which must mean that there's a reason that he wants to obscure himself, probably just to keep his friends away from him or something like that, or even just keep information from leaking out. Actually, no, because Muscular, hard to tell what's going on through Izuku's mind. But the big point here to just take away from this is that the way that this was all framed was there to provoke a certain response in the fan base, and with the recent weeks of sensational headlines and speculation that we've seen, we can say that the author probably succeeded. My next point that I wanted to cover was specifically Inko. So, this was technically an Inko chapter, but I felt like it was really brief. I think I wanted more, but I don't know what I want. I just feel like I could have done with some more. I mean, when you look at it, there's really only 1, 2, 3, 4 dedicated Inko pages. 4.5 maybe, if you look at All Might there and his tears. I don't know. I feel like I would have liked her to have a little bit more fight, but I don't know what else there is to be said, because at the end of the day, Izuku's going to leave. We already know that's going to be the conclusion, so why waste time? Especially with Inko, who is not that important of a character. Like, she's pretty, you can just toss her to the side kind of thing in terms of the overall narrative. I don't know. I'm in a really weird place on this one. I would have liked more, but I don't know what else I would have liked. I just think she could have put up a little bit more of a fight, but it wouldn't go anywhere because we know he has to leave. Yeah. The one thing though is that you see him have such a relationship with his mother, and then you wonder, where is his dad? Like, his dad should be there to hug both of them as well. It just kind of reminds you, like, this is just still a very awkward situation with the father here. But yeah, no, overall, I will say I didn't think we were gonna get even 4 pages of Inko. So I appreciate that much. This is another nice surprise. All right, but that's my general notes. I have 2 more notes at the end of the video. And we'll get there when we get there, but let's get into the page-by-page walkthrough. And so with that, we end up on the first page where we see Shindo's buddies. So these are the people that Tatami, I think, Shindo's girlfriend, was in communication with earlier. These are these are their friends. Also on this page, we have another confirmation that Muscular is Jailbreaker, and I know this is important because there's been some confusion. People are calling Muscular Jailbreaker. That's largely what this is implying. Second page is the civilians being nice. So this follows from previous events that were trying to show nuance when it came to the mentality of the population. And this is a really good moment because, like I said in a previous video, it's really important that the author not depict the civilians as inadvertent villains. So when you have them coming out and helping Shindo, this is a good move. And I especially like that these people were going to try and take Shindo to the hospital because that's why they're asking to pull up a car. And I think it's good to see that them seeing Shindo almost die was able to shake them a little bit. I think that is very worthwhile. And this is going to be better in the long run. It's really important that we show that these people are victims still, even though they are making things very difficult. Their victimhood has to be preserved. Otherwise, there's not going to be a lot of reader sympathy for why heroes have to go save them. Also, the stretcher they brought was kind of furry, or I don't know, leafy. It must have been maybe with a quirk. That must be what it is. Page 3, we get to see something that I suggested last week, that being that Shindo caught a glimpse of Izuku. So it's interesting that this was used to establish more that Izuku had slightly changed. Though I am legitimately curious how much Shindo actually saw or heard, but whatever. Anyway, right now Shindo has an idea where Izuku is, sort of, because he's met him, and we as readers understand that Izuku is supposed to be slightly different. And with the title of the chapter, the author is probably trying to say that Izuku is a bit more mature, and that's probably what Shindo saw. Anyway, also on this page, we have Izuku leaving Muscular with the police, and it's good to see how hardcore the police are right now. So page 4 is framed as a reveal page, the reveal being that Izuku is in cahoots with All Might, which definitely shocking when you're reading it, you know, page by page. On this page, we also see that Izuku's backpack is open, which I think the implication here is that Izuku pulled his phone from the backpack, because why else would the thing be open, right? I guess the overall implication that you take away from this is that Izuku has gear in the backpack or something similar. I mean, he wouldn't just have a phone inside the backpack. Maybe there's snacks in there as well. Page 5. On this page, we see a swanky car. I hope it's the All Might Mobile and not the Best Genius Mobile. I can't tell though, because I don't remember what the design for Best Genius's car was. But yeah, All Might looks really good in his incognito attire. On this page, given the emphasis that the author put in on Izuku's fall, I think he's trying to indicate that Izuku doesn't have the smoothest use of float yet, which makes sense. Even outside of combat situations where there's less stress and he can focus on it more. So I think this was an interesting little detail. Now, page 6 seems to be an exposition page along with slight characterization on Izuku. So the reinforcing gloves, the mid gauntlets, I thought they were neat. Given that they're samples, I really hope that they came from David or Melissa, because I think that would be really cool. Next, All Might telling Izuku to not go too hard before the rematch. This is interesting, and even more interesting in what Izuku thinks on page 7. So on page 7, it's concerning that after being told to not get banged up too much, Izuku is thinking about how he said he'd disregard himself. Apologies. So my knee-jerk response on that, especially with Izuku saying right ... is that Izuku might actually go too far before the big rematch. I mean, it doesn't take that much for Izuku to think, oh, I don't care about what happens to me, I gotta save people. All he needs is like a really tough villain, and he's gonna end up doing that. Like, if he goes to a situation where there are, let's say, 5 of the near high ends, do you think Izuku isn't going to bang himself up in order to save people? Nah, man, he's gonna do it. And the near high ends are actually like a worthwhile threat for Izuku to get really banged up on. On this page, also note, there is a moment of levity with the ringtone, and we do get, and on this page too, we get to see Endeavor, Genus, and Hawks on the scene. This tells us that those 3 are most likely in on it, and also from the shape of Hawks' dialogue box, it is telling us that his throat is still pretty damaged. Now, I do see some particulates over by the villain that they're fighting, and I do wonder if those are baby feathers that Hawks is using, but I don't see the purpose of using those. Oh, before I forget, because I actually missed the point. Good to know that the border was shut down with Japan. Good to know that Japan is such a disaster zone right now that they had to shut the border. Yeah, makes sense to me. Page 8 is where Hawks justifies the current reality for the reader. First, Hawks establishes that isolating Izuku is a bad idea, given that they've been able to break open Tartarus, they being the villains. What Hawks is saying here is that there's no place that can easily match Tartarus. That said, to play devil's advocate, we know of one place that actually has been able to stop All For One from pursuing, that being America. Conversely, Hawks pointed out the counter factor, which wouldn't be possible if Izuku is in America on his own the way that All Might was. What's important here is that Hawks does want to use Izuku as a counter, and we have Hawks agreeing with being proactive, and that in of itself makes sense with Hawks' character, since he tends to go for the proactive choices, and this was later confirmed in the chapter. But it was neat to get this kinda written out for us here. That being said, this page is ultimately built to get the reader to agree with the course of action. And it's ultimately up to you whether or not you want to go with it or if you want to criticize it. For me, I think it's fine based on the premise that says that nowhere is more secure than Tartarus, and that Izuku is more valuable as a combat unit instead of a protected unit. Page 9, it's Mario! No wonder Central Hospital is amazing. And I should have realized it earlier, but the Mushroom Kingdom is here in full force. We had Yoshi, we had Toad. I really hope we get to see a Princess Peach at some point. It's just, you know, Mushroom Kingdom, these are people who figured out how to teleport and travel through pipes. And they also figured out how to power up through costumes, and they get so high on mushrooms that they double in height. You know, these guys are smart. Anyway, you have to appreciate what's going on here from the writing perspective. One, you get the hand wave of cutting edge medical treatment. Should really trademark that. Plus, you get the ever reliable recovery girl that gets brought in on everything. So this is just a lot of plot device doing what a plot device does. Central Hospital is amazing. We know that. Central Hospital can save everyone. I think they can cure cancer. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the ones that already did it. Anyway, rest of the page is justifying why Izuku is still good to go in terms of his arms and in terms of the justification. You have little explosions leaving Izuku's body instead of staying there. I don't know when. I don't know about that. When Izuku fought Muscular, blood was flowing out everywhere. Like it kind of looks like force was escaping Izuku's body. It always does escape Izuku's body, but okay, sure, I can accept that. Then we find out that Izuku's limbs were wrapped from the inside out. When I'm reading that, I'm thinking Black Whip was running inside of Izuku, because that's what I understood, especially when you say inside out. And to be fair, there's powers like that in anime, so it's not out of left field. Usually, characters that use threads can cheat in the way that Izuku is described cheating here. And in this case, Black Whip is just a giant thread. So if I'm understanding this right, especially with that inside out line, the biggest Aspel factor here initially is that Black Whip was working from the inside out, because there was no easy way for us to know that. But Black Whip, we do know, can be produced inside of the confines of the body. Specifically, we saw it when Izuku produced Black Whip from inside of his mouth. So if you keep that factor in mind, it shifts the Aspel factor from that initial point to can he make it inside of his body to does he have enough control to pull this off. But even in that case, you can hand wave it as Izuku stumbled upon that functionality during that life and death struggle, because that's how it works for other characters. Overall, I think it's a cheap move, but I don't think it's an ass pull. I could make this work with a simple 1 or 2 lines from Izuku. All the author really has to do himself is say that Izuku focused on wrapping Black Whip specifically around where he felt pain. If he did so, and you had Izuku's pain coming from somewhere deeper than the surface level of the flesh, you could easily imagine how Black Whip would respond. And then in terms of anime logic, in case anyone's finding it kind of weird, if the problem here is that when it comes to this kind of power specifically in the wider context of anime logic, the characters that do it tend to be high skill characters, and in Izuku's case, this wasn't a high skill display, this was more like an autopilot display. So if you're a hardcore anime fan, this might be what you might find odd. But otherwise, overall, I think it's cheap just because of the way it's presented. But I think that's just par for the course for the nature of a manga, and I think things are already in place that can justify Black Whip's functionality of inside out. Finally, we get the line that he's still damaged, but note that there's no longer a limit. Functionally, what this does is that until we're told otherwise, there is a soft limit on Izuku that the author can choose to acknowledge or not. So pretty much, the author can now change Izuku's expiry date whenever he wants. I guess if we're looking at like narrative strategies in the future, I guess we have to be looking at whether or not the author is going to keep saying like, oh my gosh, guys, look, Izuku's about to break his arms, and then be like, oh wait, look, Izuku came up with a whole new way of mitigating the damage once again. If he does that a bunch of times, that'd be really cheap. I don't think he's going to use that cheat too often though, so I really don't think we have to worry about it. Right now, all this does is give the author more leeway. Anyway, page 11 is the Inko is told page, and I think it's implied that she got the majority of the story due to the empty panel here. This usually signifies a passage of time. Anyway, page 12, Izuku. I fully agree with him on Shigaraki being able to find him. Like, Shigaraki has 2 tools to do that, either search or weird one for all connection. It's a miracle that no one has come to actually kidnap Izuku or bomb that hospital, honestly. Now, the second half of what Izuku is talking about, I don't know. Initially, I didn't know. So initially, this is dicey, and mind you, the author shows you that Izuku's afraid with the tremble effect, but leaving his friends out of this doesn't guarantee that they won't get hurt. Like, this is a much bigger game. The worst thing here is that these people are heroes during the worst period for everybody, and if you took page 12 by itself, It really doesn't make sense, especially when you consider the fact that there might still be a traitor in UA. That kind of is saying that there's still a danger factor in there, but this whole thing makes more sense with the context of page 13, and I'm really happy that the author put it in there. Page 13 is where Izuku says that he wants to preempt Shigaraki, and this makes page 12 simpler to interpret because what Izuku is ultimately saying is that it's not that he thinks being away from UA keeps his loved ones safe, it's that if he can wipe Shigaraki ahead of time, people won't come into danger. And obviously he has to do it because he's the guy with people living inside of him. He's pretty much one of the only people that can actually tangle with Shigaraki, and one of the only people that can maybe sense Shigaraki through the weird one for all for one connection. So him being in UA just isn't going to work out. I think those two pages taken together makes this work. Anyway, the rest of the page is his mom. And then we go to page 14, and I gotta do this page. Page 14 is the contrast page that shows how much things have changed and how far Izuku has come. The contrast being it's now Izuku who is comforting his mom or whatever. Now, one thing is that Izuku here tells Inko that he'll be coming back home, but this is also the guy who wants to win no matter what happens to him. So I don't really know, man. I don't know. Like one of those lines is lying. I think he's lying to Inko. I'm not sure he can make that promise when in the back of his mind he's thinking he'll do whatever it takes. Page 15 is the All Might living up to his promise page with every other hero agreeing with the plans. The page is the confirmation that Hawks wants to make use of Izuku as a battle asset. And I want to make it clear here, this make him the focal point is entirely the only reason you need to justify why Izuku isn't being hidden in America. So if anyone comes to you and they're asking, why didn't they just send Izuku to America if they want to protect him? They don't want to protect him. They want to preempt Shigaraki because that's going to be the better move in the long term is what they're feeding us. I guess like technically they want to preempt Shigaraki while also protecting Izuku to the best of their ability. They're going to be a team about it. It's not a pure like exploitive relationship. They're going to be a team about it. But this is the big thing. Izuku is important for the plans. That's what you have to keep in mind. Page 16 is how Izuku got the cape page. On this page you also have Gran Torino giving some very jaded advice. I get it. I get where he's coming from. The guy's been through a lot, but this was pretty heavy, man. Like, holy crap. This is a really weird place to set up this conflict. And the conflict being that Izuku's being told by someone that he likes to be ready to kill Shigaraki. But yeah, Gran Torino, I think, is the person most justified for it, but it's still kind of weird. Izuku, at this, well, with this setup, Izuku might actually end up killing someone. I don't think it'd be Shigaraki, though. Alternatively, he might kill someone only for the person to be revived somehow, so that he gets some kind of lesson out of that. I mean, there's options. This does set up some pretty cool payoffs. And then we have page 17, the team up page. What else can I say about this team up page? It's Izuku plus All Might plus the top three. They're all working together to deal with the League of Villains. And they're going for the League of Villains. That's what we can tell here with the settle the score. So yeah, that's exciting. That's very exciting. And now we can talk about, actually, I want to talk about Bakugo, but I'm going to very quickly touch on Ochako because Ochako is the main female character. I just want to remind you, when a hero is suffering, what do we ultimately see happening? This has been the reality of the situation since the very beginning. When a hero is suffering, other heroes are the ones who are showing up. And in this case, look at who Izuku is surrounded by. He's got All Might, he's got Endeavor, he's got Hawks. Three people who have legitimate understanding of strife and drama. And one of them, All Might, is intimately aware of the struggles that occur when you have All for One in the picture. If there's anyone here that has a good shot of understanding Izuku, it's All Might. Now mind you can say that Izuku's emotions aren't being addressed here, but Izuku's got the odds stacked in his favor with the team of people who have experience with making hard choices and have experiences with hard choices coming back to bite them in the butt. These are all people who are on the same battlefield as Izuku. If there are any people that are going to be able to help him along, it's these people, especially All Might. Now the reason I bring this up again is just because the more that you make these answers come out in regards to Ochako's question, the more special you need to make Ochako's answer. Especially if the author is going to keep her fixated on this whole who helps heroes when they're suffering. Because again, the plainest idea here is that heroes help heroes. When Izuku is making this hard choice, what does All Might do? All Might goes with Izuku. He's not even giving him a choice. This is how these guys operate. They're helping Izuku to the best of their abilities. and the reason this becomes more important is because if Ochako is going to need a bigger payoff in order to make her storyline seem fulfilling, it's going to require Horikoshi to actually be able to write significant emotional connection between Ochako and Izuku, and I just don't know. I feel like with Ochako you might end up with a really contrived situation, but it all really depends. He might be able to pull it off, but it's just, again, it's one of those dicey situations. Moving on though, Bakugo. So this page has more implications for Bakugo than anyone else. I was really kind of hoping when I was reading the spoilers that maybe Shoto, Tokoyami, and Bakugo were involved in this situation, because, well, you know, Tokoyami, Endeavor, Best Jeanist, those are pretty much those guys' mentors. It would have been nice if they were there, but we don't get any indication of it. The thing with Bakugo here is that Bakugo has a fixation on both All Might and Izuku. Remember, like when this secret got out, it was a secret between the three of them. And remember, Izuku right now is thinking about doing whatever it takes. And who is the person who has a significant issue with Izuku losing sight of himself? It's Bakugo. Further, who is the person that watches over Izuku along with All Might? It's Bakugo. If Bakugo hasn't been involved in this situation here with All Might and Izuku, he's not going to be very happy. Especially with All Might keeping, like, All Might's presence here is what makes this situation worse for that kid in particular. Because you had a little bit of a trio of secret keepers with Izuku, All Might, and Bakugo, and you've just kind of ripped that trio apart. Bakugo should not take that lightly. He's probably going to be very livid. He's probably going to have words for All Might. I'm not sure if he's going to have angry words or actually have something to tell All Might off on. And the other thing is, because Bakugo is so significant in this entire situation, it's tough. It's tough to figure out whether or not All Might would have brought him in. Because when you go back to Izuku's thing about he doesn't want anyone else to get hurt, Bakugo is one of the people that he was thinking about. So realistically, you could imagine Izuku leaving with All Might without telling Bakugo and telling All Might to not tell Bakugo anything about it, which will only really piss Bakugo off more. Remember, Izuku's been going off by himself. Bakugo's the one that keeps shoving himself into the situation. He did it when Izuku first ran off during the war, and he did it when Izuku was up in the sky, getting in the way of a shot from All For One, right? We all remember that. This is a page that either sets up or gives reason for why Bakugo goes directly after Izuku and All Might, fueled entirely by his rage of being left behind, or like also the hurt of being left behind. Or this sets up some other emotional rhetoric when it comes to Bakugo. Now, the other thing is, because of the people who are involved here, I wouldn't be surprised if these kids are tagging along with their heroes somehow, but we'll have to see. Because at the end of the day, the other provisional heroes, they're out working, so there's no reason for UA to not be working as well. We'll have to see. But yeah, no, this page, if Bakugo hasn't been involved in this feels like we're about to get some kind of emotion. We're going to get some kind of follow-up to this, because there's no way Bakugo is going to take this lying down. Not when the guy has literally taken a spear through the gut for Izuku. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.